Hi everyone, it's Lara. Thank you so much for watching and welcome to today's tutorial. Today I will show you how I made my doggie's new winter coat. I made myself a new winter coat this year. If you missed the tutorials for that, I will list them down below. And I thought my doggie should have a new coat as well, so that we can go in kind of a partner look when we go out. So if you want to know how I have done the doggie coat, then please keep watching. Let's have a look at the pattern. This is the main part for the coat. Here I have the piece for the doggie's belly, the little pocket and the hood. We are going to start with this piece first. So the distance from here to here is the distance from the end of the doggie's neck, at the end of his head, to his tail. This line is slightly rounded because it fits so much better. So you have two possibilities. Either you cut two pieces of the fabric and then you will have a seam in the middle. If you do that, you will have to add seam allowance on each side. The second possibility is to fold the fabric here, which will create a straight line. You won't have to add seam allowance then here, only on the other sides. And then you will have to sew in a little bit in order to create this slightly rounded shape, which is what I'm going to do, so don't worry about that now. You will see all in this tutorial. I have several marks here for the leg bands that I like pulling over Hercules' legs so that the coat would stay in place when it gets really windy, so that it wouldn't fold upwards. The pocket, the snaps and the end of the hood. Here we have the pattern for the hood. I was able to use a sweater that I have bought for Hercules years ago with a hood on it. I just copied the pattern, but if you don't have any sweater or shirt for your dog with a hood that you could copy, it doesn't matter, you can create your own pattern. The shape is pretty much the same shape you would create for a human hood, it's just much smaller. So you will have to measure from the end of your doggie's neck at the back of his head over his little head towards his forehead, and that would be this measurement. Just make it very loose, and then you will measure from the middle of his forehead towards his neck on the side, and that would be this measurement. And here I went about 1¼ inches inwards, and this length is basically this length, so that should help you to create a pattern. And for the size of my doggie, let me measure it. It's about 7 inches high. Here we have the piece for the doggie's belly. So it might look quite weird, the shape, but trust me, this works perfectly fine. It is a bit narrow on the front. The reason for it is that the distance between his front legs around the shoulder area is not that big, so it needs to be that narrow. It is a bit wider here than necessary. The reason for it is that I like adding elastic band. It's gonna be a little bit ruffled, and it fits the belly so much nicer than it would do if I would create just a flat piece. I have seen that on one coat that a friend of mine had for her dog, and I found that it fits the dog so much better. So since then I'm always doing it like this. So if I put it to the front, then here we have the measurement for around the doggie's neck, also measured very generously. It's supposed to be always quite loose so that the dog feels great in the coat. One thing that you have for sure noticed is this triangle that I cut out, and you are probably asking yourself, why? So if you have a female dog, you won't have to do that, and I think that also answers the question. I have to cut it out because my dog is a male dog, he has a penis, and if I wouldn't cut this out, he would constantly pee inside of his coat. Many companies that produce dog clothes do not think about that, but the doggie's penis is very often very far in the front on the belly, and that's why I have to cut out this little triangle so that my doggie can pee freely. And last but not least, we have here the little pocket that is quite self-explanatory. I have tried several shapes until I was happy with the result, and this is how my pockets look like. Here I have the velvet main part and then the same piece made of the lining. Notice how here the line is still straight and how here the line is slightly rounded. This is because I have already sewn the end in, so about that much, and that made the difference. So I'm going to do the same with the velvet piece. I'm going to turn it to the bedside. So I have already made a mark here on one side how far I will go in. And here is a tip for you. Whenever you are sewing things like that, do not go really angled, because that wouldn't create a nice shape. So make sure that you go almost as though it were rounded, like really slowly, and only at the end go a bit further away from the main line. And this is going to create the nicely rounded shape instead of being it straight and then going down in an angle. So I will put in a few pins, and then I will saw this through the sewing machine so that I will have also nicely rounded line at the end of the main part of the coat. Here I have the two belly pieces. This one is made of velvet, and the other one, as you can see, is made of the warm lining, and I have already put them together so that the good sides are facing each other, and I started pinning them together. You can also see that I have pinned the elastic band to one side, and on the other side I will leave it about that much open. So first of all, I need it for being able to turn the belly piece to the good side once the rest has been sewn together. And second, I will pull the end of the elastic band through here and pin it in place, and then I will sew it in, but you will see that in detail. Here are my hood pieces. So those two are the velvet pieces. I will pin them together around this line, and I will do the same for the lining pieces. As usual, when I pin the pieces together, I keep the pins at right angles so that I can keep them in the fabric while sewing. Here I have two pieces for one of the pockets. I have already finished one because I wanted to show you how much smaller the finished pocket will be. So it is definitely the best if you draw the actual size of your pocket, and then you need to add enough seam allowance around the actual size. Otherwise you might end up with two small pockets. So I will put the lining and the velvet together like this so that the good sides are facing each other. I'm just going to pin it on 3 places, and I will add more pins later. But what I wanted to show you is where I will sew. So I will sew from here, where this line is, to the edge, and then to the bottom where the pointy end is, and back, and then only till here. So this will remain open. That will allow me to turn the pocket to the good side, and then I will just sew the edge through. And my recommendation for you is to use the edge of your sewing foot as a guide and align it with the edge of the pocket. And when you keep the position of your needle the same for both pockets, that way you will make sure that you will sew equally far from the edge on both pockets, and they will be the same size. Next, I have here a strip of the faux fur for the edge of Hercules' hood. So I have sewn around with a zigzag in order to prevent the fabric from fraying, because there is so much hair falling out if you don't do that. And this round piece is going to be the bubble. And I have here some fluff of an old, that I took out from an old pillow, which I will use for stuffing the bubble so that it will keep a nice round shape. And last but not least, I have here some snaps that I will put to one side of the coat, and we can start. So the next step was to sew the end of the main velvet piece through so that the shape would be as rounded as the lining part. Once that was done, I started sewing together the hood pieces. And then I have pinned the lining hood to the lining main piece, and I have sewn those pieces together. Once those steps were finished, I started working on the belly piece. I believe that I have forgot to mention that I have to leave one more space open on the belly piece. So the elastic band is pinned on one side and I have to leave about 2 or 3 inches open on the other side so that I will be able to pull the elastic band through once I'm done. So here I am using the edge of my sewing foot as a guide so that I would keep everywhere the same distance. The next step was to turn the belly piece to the good side. As usual, I helped myself with the scissors in order to shape all edges. Then I grabbed the elastic band and I have pulled it through and pinned it in place. Next, I took a crayon and I've marked where the elastic band's edges are so that I wouldn't sew through. And then I pinned around the edges of the elastic band. I made sure that the band is inside still loose. I have adjusted the end and pinned it in place again. Next, I have sewn around the entire belly piece very close to the edge. And once I've finished this step, I have sewn through the lines that I just pinned around the elastic band. I was really careful so that I wouldn't sew through the band. Then I cut back the excess part of my elastic band and the belly piece was done. Next, I started pinning the velvet hood to the velvet main part. As usual, I kept the pins at right angles and then I simply sewn those two pieces together. I placed 2 quite loose pieces of black elastic at the end of the main velvet part on the good side and I have pinned them in place. These are going to be the loops where I will pull Hercules' legs through so that the coat would stay in place. And I also straightened the piece that has been sewn through at the end. Normally this would be the time to sew on also the little pockets, but I have to admit I completely forgot about that. So I went on with the next step. So I went on and I started pinning the lining and the velvet side together. Here you can see how it looked like when it was done, and here we have a piece that I will leave open so that I will be able to turn the coat to the good side later, so I marked it for you. I have sewn around the edges. I, as usual, used the right edge of my sewing foot as a guide so that I would keep the same distance everywhere. Since many of the parts of the coat have either edges or are rounded, I had to cut back the excess fabric everywhere where I would need to shape it. So on each round part I have cut out a few triangles where the pointy end of the triangle would end exactly where the seam was. And whenever I would reach an edge, I would have to cut the pointy end away so that I would be able to shape it nicely later. Once that was ready, I started turning the coat to the good side. Once the coat was turned to the good side, I put the scissors inside of the coat and I started shaping it. Then I started pinning around the edge of my coat, especially at the place that was still open, that was there so that I would be able to turn the coat to the good side. So I folded it nicely together and pinned everything in place. Here is what the coat looked like once the edge has been pinned in place, and as you can see I have also positioned the little pockets and pinned them in place. Of course, I had to make sure that the pockets are in the exactly same place on each side. Then I have sewn the little pockets on, and I have also sewn around the entire edge of the coat. So let's have a look at the coat, how it looks so far. So I have sewn the velvet piece with the lining together. I have sewn around the edge, and I have also added the little pockets that I have forgotten. So the right way to do this would be, of course, to sew the pockets on the velvet piece first and then sew the lining and the velvet together, but that's okay, this worked as well. The only thing that you can see now is the seam on the other side of the coat, but that's not a big deal. So here we have the loops for the back legs, and I'm going to zoom a little bit more in so that you can see now the belly piece, because I have sewn the belly piece on one side of the coat in place. So I put the main part of the coat over the belly piece, and then I just copied the edge seam here and also here. And on the other side of the belly piece I will punch in 2 snaps here on the top and then 2 snaps here on the bottom, and then I will have to punch in also here the 2 snaps on the other side and here on the neck piece. Now we will have a look at the hood. So I have pinned the strip of the fur already in place. What I have done here is I made it a little bit more narrow, not marrow, narrow at the end. And I have also shortened it because the strip was a little bit too long. And the next step is to sew this in place. And once that will be done, we will continue together. Now the strip of the faux fur has been sewn in. I will start here at one end. I will fold the loose end of the faux fur inwards, and then I fold it over like this towards the lining part of the hood, and I will pin it in place at right angles. I always like using pins that have colorful heads, or at least something that is not the same color like the fabric that I'm working with, because that way I can't miss any. And I will continue doing so until the entire strip has been pinned in place. The next step after the faux fur strip has been pinned in place was to hand stitch it to the lining. Here is how the hood looked like once it was finished. I have also already punched in the snaps. I skipped the step because, first of all, it is very large, and second, whenever you buy snaps there is always a guide on the box, so I don't think that needs to be explained here. Next, I marked the place where I wanted to sew on the fluffy bubble. The bubble is actually very easy to make. It is basically just a circle where you need to hand stitch around the edge and then pull it together. So once I hand stitch around the entire edge, I pulled the thread on one side a bit tighter, but I still left it open a little bit so that I would be able to stuff it. Once my bubble was full enough, I pulled the end of my thread tighter and then I simply stitched it together. The very last step was to stitch the bubble to the hood. So here is what the bubble looked like once it has been stitched in place, and then the doggy coat was done.
This is it for today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumb up. You can also subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss any further projects. Just hit the button above me or the one down below. I will list also my Instagram account in the description box together with a few other videos that might be interesting for you. And thank you so much for watching. I wish you a wonderful day and see you next time. Bye!